by the George Washington University and a certified Com Ferry Hay job evaluator. He commands an experience of 15 years of talent development management, 4 years of professional coach and organizational development consultant. His focus spans as far as Africa, Asia, North America, and still goes wider. He has enjoyed practicing the human resource trade and coaching in the pension sector, multimedia industry, life insurance, fast moving, and many others. As at NSSF, he managed a $2 million staff cooperative society, which he managed from the ground, and a training budget or learning budget of $1 million US. He has an equity and merit he was an equity and merit fellow at the University of Manchester. He is very, very well read, as you can see, both academically and professionally. Presently, he's the president of the International Coaching Federation of Uganda chapter, but also he is a member of the Human Resource Managers Association of Uganda and an immediate past Secretary General. Members, I present to you none other than Joseph Ajal. Please join me to welcome him. Back to you, President.
Thank you. You're welcome, Joseph. Please talk to us.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. A very good morning to you all, dear Rotarians and friends. I am excited to be in your company once again. Thank you so much for the invitation, President Edward. We've had a couple of conversations around the subject of talent pipeline development and unlocking member potential. As a member organization, you obviously get a lot of interest from, I hope the screen can be cleared. If that's all right, whoever is sharing the screen may stop sharing. I believe that was just for the purpose of the introductions. So as a member organization, you are definitely looking to grow yourselves. I find myself in excellent company when I speak with the likes of PAG James Onyoin, my fellow coach, a member of ICF Uganda chapter, because talent pipeline development and unleashing leadership potential amongst your organizations and your clubs is inherently important. Now, let me speak from the point of view of a human resources practitioner and a talent practitioner. Typically, if we're to compare this with your corporate organization, people come in at the level of intern, graduate learner, graduate trainee, graduate management trainee, whatever titles they might be. In financial institutions, they might be known by titles such as clerks, they might be known as tellers, they might be known as officers, assistants, and so on and so forth. All these are just titles which mean nothing but the fact that somebody has joined the organization. In your clubs, these are members. So people join whether as interactors in their teens or as Rotaractors in their 20s, or in fact, as Rotarians once they clock the age of 30 onwards. So right here, I believe the vast majority of the people attending this fellowship are Rotarians. In other words, adult members, fully fledged Rotary Club members. So you'd like to build a talent pipeline of succession, because every organization that is intentional about living and outliving its own current lifespan should have a talent pipeline. What do we mean by a talent pipeline? And how do we unlock member potential? For starters, you have all these tiers. We call them tiers of leadership. Now, the tiers are three. at the very least. Some organizations might go beyond 3, but by and large, and generally speaking, most will stick to 3. Entry level, middle level, and senior executive level. So let's go to the realm of an organization and look at what typically would be the titles and positions of people that join your organization. Let me use a typical environment of a bank. Most of us are familiar with banks. Either we've banked or we work in a bank, right? So because all of us are familiar with banking, either we've been customers of a bank or we work there, let me use the banking sector. Now in the bank, typically people join at the level of tellers or officers or assistants or clerks. When they join at that level, they are put through a talent development program. They're taken through induction, they're taken through orientation, they're taken through training, they're taken through learning and development. They're also put at the hands or at the feet of a buddy. So that's the person who helps them throughout their induction or throughout their orientation of anything between 3 to 6 months until ultimately this person becomes accepted in the organization. He or she becomes appointed into the organization. So that's the first level. That's just officer level. Entry level, we call that entry level. So typically in your clubs, entry level would be anybody who has joined in their rookie year. What is a rookie year? A rookie year, this is borrowed from sports in North America, where in the first year of one joining a club or a professional sporting body, they are considered to be a rookie. In other words, the first 12 months of service. So you have people that are rookies in your organization, in your clubs. A rookie is anyone who is less than 12 months in service or since becoming a member. That's a rookie, typically. So in the organization, let's say in the bank, anybody who has served for a year or less is a rookie. And because there's a very, very, very high risk and a very high cost involved with rookie turnover. Turnover means when people leave, when they resign or they get terminated or get dismissed or separated with, whether or not through their own making or through something, some other factors or forces beyond their control. That makes them, it becomes a huge cost to the organization, a huge burden. Now, for the sake of your clubs, because they are voluntary clubs where people even pay membership, you cannot really enforce it. You can't terminate people, you can't expel people, you can't dismiss unless, of course, they have committed some severe breach of ethical values, which is understandable. In such exceptions, yes, you can ask them to separate the organization. But by and large, because it's a member-affiliated organization, there's no salary paid, it's pro bono. People come together because they would love to build their networks, professional and otherwise. There is no real hardcore enforceability. So the risk of rookie turnover is less. It's just apathy, member apathy. Members can become apathetic towards attending club fellowships, meetings, and other activities. Now, at that point in time, assuming that this has been a successful person, they have joined in their first year, they have made it through their rookie year, you now move on to the second year of service and onwards. You start to build a middle level. Now, typically in the bank, you'd have supervisors and team leads. At that point in time, you have sales team leads, you have commercial team leads, you have credit team leads, you have, whatever, supervisors, financial supervisors, audit supervisor, whatever the case. Those titles, team leader, team lead, supervisor, lead this, lead that, lead the other. These are basically, we call them middle level roles, middle level titles, middle level positions. So in your clubs, what are those middle level positions? And how can you unlock that potential in these rookies who are now graduating to mid-level from second year onwards? You start now to interest them in projects. You bring them on board. You have CFTs, cross-functional teams. You have perhaps Rotarian James on your own leading on a particular team, and then he has people working with him. So you have committees, you have subcommittees, you have people who volunteer their time to step up to the plate. And the best time to bring on board people like this to help them build and unleash their potential is from infancy, of course, as soon as they join, but better yet, when they have hit their first year of service, because now they have passed the rookie stage, they have been confirmed in service, quote unquote, and they can now begin to scale up. So at this point, what do you need? You need knowledge, you need training, you need skills, you need competencies, you need exposure, you need attendance to as many events as you possibly can expose them to. You have the cancer run coming up on, I believe, 4th of September, if I'm not mistaken, around that time. So you need to build the capacity of these younger fellows, these younger leaders who are extremely explosive, extremely excited, extremely intentional about what they'd like to be and what they'd like to do going forward. then you begin to unleash this potential in them. Now that's moving into the middle level. Further afield, in the banking sector, using again the banking sector as an example, you then have people who move into middle management positions. Now, what are these middle management positions? You have branch managers, for example. You have operations managers. You have tactical managers. You have all this, anything related to operations. Whenever you hear a title that has operations in it, just know that's a middle level title. There's no senior executive title that should have operations. Why do I say this? When we do job evaluation, when we do job analysis, we make sure that we strictly avoid certain use of titles. Titles such as coordinator, that's low level, very, very low level. It describes your job without necessarily saying much. When I hear somebody called a coordinator, I don't expect that to be a CEO. A CEO does not coordinate. A CEO leads. So coordinator is entry level. Then operations, anything to do with operations, branch operations manager, branch manager, middle level. Middle level in a sense that they do a whole lot of operations and they do a whole lot of heavy lifting. They supervise big teams and big numbers. Now in your club, how do you unleash potential at the middle level? You now start to appoint club officials. You have to, now they move on from just committees where they serve as volunteers to now having actual seats, legal rights and status. They now become club officials, all right? Treasurer, for example, sergeant at arms, for example, and so on, and chief whip, for example. You have all these amazing, interesting roles in your organizations that now people coming into the middle level of the organization can begin to enjoy. And meanwhile, in doing all this, you are training them, you're inculcating knowledge and skills and empowering them with competencies that they need to lead at the highest level. So that's what is happening at the middle level. Now, typically in the organization, that's what you call your middle level management. In your club, again, those club official roles are your middle level roles. Now, what are the executive roles? What are the senior roles? Let's go back to the banking sector. Now you have heads of department, all right? Heads of function. You have heads of vertical, heads of unit, all right? And so in these functions, you have additionally titles such as chief legal officer, chief finance officer, chief human resources officer, or chief people and culture officer, chief internal audit. These are executive titles. Whenever you hear somebody with the title chief or head, it's just nomenclature, but typically what that means is that you are now at the executive level of leadership in that organization. So why are they called chiefs? Well, it's because they head up functions, they head up verticals. Also, there's another typical term that is used, the chief suite. Another title that refers to ExCo members or executives or senior management teams is the chief suite. So typically you have titles such as country management team, senior leadership team, referring to the ExCo, the executive committee, the leadership team that provides hardcore executive leadership oversight for the organization's management. Now that is led usually by a CEO, a general manager, an MD, whatever the title might be, but these titles change from organization. Now in your club, the CEO of your club is your president. In this case, President Edward is the CEO of this club, of Daybreak, Kampala Daybreak. So he is the chief executive of the club at this point in time. He has legal mandate. He's a signatory to your bank accounts. He makes decisions that are binding, that he's held liable for. If he makes mistakes, he will be accountable for those mistakes. And if he's successful, he will also be heralded and celebrated for having succeeded. So the buck stops with the president at club level. He or she is the final authority. But because he wants to lead, he or she wants to lead in a collaborative manner, he can't work by himself. He needs a treasurer. He needs a vice. He needs all these club officials. So that forms your executive committee. Now, how do you graduate people from rookies to mid-level to eventually executive? You have to be intentional. You have to be deliberate. You have to build capacity, build competency. As opposed to training them, you have to infuse a culture of learning in them. What's the difference? Well, training is event-based. It starts and ends. There's a start time, there's an end time. But learning, on the other hand, is continuous. Learning is lifelong. Learning is deliberate, it's budgeted for, it's intentional. It's not left to chance, it's not haphazard. It's not it's not a hit and miss kind of arrangement. It's not that. It is intentional. You have to structure in place a budget. You have to have a capacity building arm within your clubs, within your organization that allows people to move from the level of rookies to senior executives in the club in a couple of years. And then you shorten the learning time from, let's say, 1, 2, 3 to 5 years, as opposed to 10 or even more. Because typically in the corporate environment, execs are only appointed after at least 10 years. Why is it 10 years? There's a science to this. There's a science to it. Why is it that most job adverts for the executive level or senior manager roles ask for 10 years experience? CEOs, 15 years or even sometimes more. It's because there's a science to it. If you've read Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Outliers, then you know about the 10,000 rule. If you've read Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, then you know about the 10,000 hour rule. What is the 10,000 hour rule? The 10,000 hour rule is basically the rule that says it takes 10,000 hours of practice to become an expert at anything. So if you start on music today, you've never played a musical instrument in your entire life, but you start today to practice. You get a tutor, you get a mentor, you get a coach, you get a trainer, you get a music class teacher. If he or she starts to train you now, give or take in 10 years, you'll be an expert at whatever instrument it is. Whatever instrument, you'll become an expert if you consistently put in the work in 10,000 hours. What is 10,000 hours? 10,000 hours is an average of 10 years, give or take. Now, for us in coaching and in HR, because we want to build a leadership bench strength, we try and cut back. We try and cut back that learning time. A learning curve, we call it the learning curve, the curve between what you need to know to execute vis-a-vis what you know now. So if the level of knowledge you have now is X, but what you need to execute at club presidency level is Y, how many years of learning will it take to unlock that potential in you? What ingredients will you need to unlock that potential? What level of cultivation? Let's use soil, for example. What manure will you need? What fertilizers will you need? What quality of seedlings will you need to plant the soil? How much rainfall or water must you have? Should you have sprinkler irrigation? And so on and so forth. How will you tend to the plant, to the crops? How will you weed? How will you prune? How will you ensure that you support it and that it grows? If it's vines, like vine plants, for example, what's this fruit? So, passion fruit. Then you need to support it. How will you support the vines to grow? So the same is true in your clubs, in your organization. What are you deliberately doing to intentionally build the capacity of these younger folks who are moving in from rookie to becoming, first of all, they're just interested, they're excited to join your organization. And when I say rookie, it's got no age limit. You could be 75 and you're a rookie. You could be 90 and it's your first time. So it's got nothing to do with age. It's the experience that you have. It's the wealth of knowledge that you have vis-a-vis what is required for you to deliver at your club level. So with that in mind, you now begin to structure in a learning and development component. Now you move on from just being to having organizational learning is sporadic. It's a hit and miss. There are organizations where if budgets are squeezed, the first line that they cut is the learning budget. They say, this year there will be no training, there will be no travel, and so on and so forth. There will be no investment in learning. What you're actually doing is you're telling the staff, you're telling the people, the members in your club, that we don't care enough for your growth. Budgets are squeezed, so we'll do absolutely nothing to develop and grow you. Is that right? So that is organizational learning. With that kind of hit and miss arrangement, sporadic learning, it's on and off, it's hit and miss, it's sporadic learning, you have organizational learning happening. However, for you to build yourself into a learning organization, to move from OL to LO, LO being learning organization, you must be intentional, you must be deliberate. You have to have a corporate training plan. You have to have a budget. You have to have structures. You have to have functions. If we're building the finance function, who can we identify 5 years down the road who will become the next treasurer? You understand? Which interactor or rotaractor now can we encourage to join our club, and in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, they will be the next. So you have to have a clear line of sight as far as your talent pipeline building and development is concerned. That's what you need to do. So you move from just organizational learning, which is sporadic or hit and miss, to intentionally having a learning organization. However, it's not enough to stop at an LO. You now need to move to a high low. What's a high low? A high impact learning organization. High impact learning organization. What is a high impact learning organization? It's an organization that has projects, It's an organization that has visibility, that has a very robust PR arm. The things that the Rotary clubs do with the Rotary Cancer Run every year is a high impact learning visibility kind of organization. You actually are showing people that you care enough about them to invest in the future, to pay it forward, to pay it back, to have those back and forth linkages. That's a high impact learning organization. So there are 3 levels there. You move from just organizational learning to a learning organization to a high impact learning organization. There's a 4th level. What is that? Hypo. Hypo in talent management can also mean high potential. It has 2 meanings. It can mean high potential, or it can mean a high impact performing organization. It therefore follows that a high impact learning organization will inevitably also be a high impact performing organization. Simple. A high-low equals a hypo. Now, some people have asked, you might have heard this on social media many times, where the CFO said to the CEO, what if we invest all these millions of dollars in training our people and they leave? What did the CEO answer the CFO? It's a common meme, you've heard about this. He answered, what if we don't invest in them and they stay? Do you want to be the sort of leaders who don't invest in your people, but they stay? So you're stuck with mediocrity. And oftentimes, the people who are not that good, well, they're not very attractive to competition. Therefore, they stay. Those who are very attractive to competition move. They find themselves moving. So what is competition? For Rotary, competition is other activities, other social enterprises, other community organizations. It could be, faith-based or other organizations. Not that I'm not, there's nothing against faith per se, I'm a person of faith myself. But what I mean by this is that people will find other pastimes. It could be a sport, it could be golf. Nothing against golf. I love sport. I'm a sportsman myself. But people will find other ideas that fill up their minds and take up their time that they can invest in and gives them the same feeling of satisfaction and joy of accomplishment, because that's what you're all about. So that becomes your competition. So you must invest in your people, invest time, invest knowledge, invest skills in them. Now, there's the 70-20-10 rule. For us in learning and development, we call it the 70-20-10 rule. What is the 70-20-10 rule? It means that 70% of what you know you learned by doing. When I think about DAG James Onyoin, Dr. James Onyoin, James Onyoin becomes so good at what he does now because he does it every day. He's a certified public accountant. He's a certified professional coach. He becomes so good at what he does because he's perfected, he's practicing his craft. Every day that he wakes up, he's sitting there at UDM Towers or whatever it is, Social Security House. He's perfecting his craft. He's driving all the way from Entebbe Road to come to the town center. He's building his capacity. He's investing in knowledge. He's traveling abroad for learning and so on and so forth. He becomes so good at what he does because of consistency. That's the first level of the 70-20-10 rule. 70% of what we know, we learn by doing. So 70% of those who are going to become leaders in your clubs going forward must be put through the ranks. They must be put through the blast furnace. They must be put through the rigor of work. Now we call those crucible assignments, crucible experiments. What is a crucible experiment? A crucible experiment is taken from the Latin word crux. The Latin word crux is the cross. So a crucible experiment is any experiment that you put a person through and they don't come out the same. Let me give you an example. When you get paper and you get a matchstick, you light it, you put the paper on fire, do you come out with paper the next time? No. You come out with ash, you come out with air, carbon dioxide, and you come out with some little bit of moisture and water, because paper was actually brought out of a tree, pulp of a tree. So those three products, the ash, the carbon dioxide, and a little amount of water, very slight mist that comes out of it, it means you cannot have the same product again. So when you put your rookies and your mentees and your club officers and your interested people that you invite as guests through the crucible, you put them through difficult, not difficult, so difficult that it defeats them, no, but difficult enough to challenge them to rise up to their full potential. That's a crucible experiment. In the bank, when they put you to act in the place of your boss who has gone on leave for a full month, that's a crucible experiment. On rotation in my organization, whenever I'm away, I appoint one of the consultants, one of the senior consultants or coaches to act in my place. I make sure I'm not even available. Like, sometime earlier this year when I was away for 6 weeks, I absolutely did nothing. Absolutely did nothing. I didn't even open my laptop for the entire 6 weeks because I am developing capacity of leadership. The same is true for your organizations. So the 70% of what your people know, they learn by doing through crucible experiments. Crucible from the word crux, which is a Latin word meaning cross. So that when somebody goes through that, when Jesus went, as Christians, we believe that when Jesus went through that experiment, that experience, he came out different. He was not the same anymore, and there's no reversal. So that's what a crucible experiment means. It means there's no reversal. You can't go back. The brain, once expanded, does not regain its former shape again. That's why we encourage children to learn, the DI. Recently, I had district governor, Mike Sebalu, talking about the launch. I think it was I was at actually the same hotel, but in another event. We're graduating a cohort of coaches at Fairway Hotel when they launched the DIA program, Drop Everything and Read program, DIA program. So when you expand the mind, you infuse people with knowledge, you infuse them with skills and competencies, then you are doing the 70%. You put them through crucible experiments, you're doing the 70% of what we learn by doing. Where is the 20% coming from? The 20% comes through supervision, through mentoring and coaching. And I've talked about coaching at one of the Rotary Club meetings here a couple of months back. So everybody needs a coach. You might remember that presentation. Everybody needs a coach. So mentoring is when you replicate yourself in somebody. So a lot of you more senior Rotarians have been mentored by Rotarians who came ahead of you. And therefore you owe it to yourselves and to your clubs to pay it forward by mentoring the next generation of leaders, right? That is what you do. Coaching, by putting them through a very structured coaching program, a very structured learning program, you're doing the 20%. And supervising them, of course, when they, for example, you put them on a project, you're doing the Rotary Council run in September. And so you want to make sure that, the vests are distributed, the publicity is happening, the public relations, the groups are being saturated with information, the collections of funds is happening, and it's properly being accounted for. You are building capacity in them. So that's the 20% through supervision, mentoring, and coaching. And also through computer-based learning, like we're doing right now. Computer-enabled on-demand learning. On-demand learning meaning you have micro-learning, people can go to the websites and they're able to download information, and then you saturate it through the groups. Finally, where does the 10% come from? Unfortunately, most of us spend all our learning budgets on the 10%, where there's only a 10% return on investment. The 10% comes from instructor-led training or classroom-based learning, just like now. Instructor-led training or classroom-based training or event-based training. There's a start time, there's an end time. However, we dump all our budgets there and expect miracles to happen. And then we start complaining training doesn't work. Well, it's because you're investing all your budget of 100% on a return on investment of 10%. The 70-20-10 rule means you must invest most of your time and effort in doing the things that you do on a regular basis. That's how you learn by up to 70%. The next 20% you learn through supervision, mentoring, and coaching. So find a mentor, find a coach. And lastly, only 10% return on investment in learning that comes through instructor-based training or classroom-based knowledge gaining and event-based training. So that's how you move from just sporadic organizational learning to a learning organization, to a high impact learning organization, and finally a high impact productive organization or performing organization, high PO. Finally, how do you then measure return on investment? How do you then know that it's paying off? If you have a healthy succession pipeline, you have indeed unleashed the potential of your members. A high impact performing organization, a 3-tier bench strength, entry level, rookies, middle level, club officers, top level or executive level, presidents, governors, IPPs, immediate past presidents, district governors, and so on and so forth. Now you're moving to the district level of leadership, the likes of James Onyoin, Honorable Mike Sebalu, and so on and so forth. That is continuing the baton, to carry on the baton of passing forward the learning at now the executive level. That's purely executive level, all right? So that's how you ensure that your organization stays healthy and stays alert and continuously grows, and you are unleashing the potential. Ask yourself this question: when people join, do you see potential in them? The answer is obviously yes. How will you unleash that potential? The answer is the steps that I've just enumerated here below for you. And how do you reward and recognize? Do you have recognition? Do you have certificates? Do you have plaques? Do you have events? Do you celebrate success? It's imperative for people to understand what success looks like from day one. Make no mistake about it. From your induction of club officers, from your first day when you're sworn in and you're given that garland to wear, make sure people understand what will success look like for us. You must have a scorecard. What gets measured gets done. Peter Drucker. If you don't measure it, trust me, it won't get done. If you're playing a game of football and there are no goalposts, you'll just get exhausted. But you'll score nothing because there are no goalposts. Do you want to be the sort of club leader who leads a club with no goals or no goalposts? No. If you run on the treadmill, yes, you burn calories, but do you gain distance? Absolutely not. You're running on the sport. So you might be very, very busy getting exhausted, but there's no result. There are no results, no visible, obvious, tangible results. So you must infuse measurable return on investment and results. In the banking sector, they have measures. They have EBITDA. They have top line revenue growth. They have bottom line. They have interest declared to shareholders, and so on and so forth. They have interest paid to members, interest paid to savers, people who invest in fixed deposits, and so on and so forth. In your clubs as well, those projects that you do must have tangible results. They must be measurable. You have to have metrics and analytics of measurement, of knowing that we started at point X, we finished at point Y, and we achieved Z results. So that, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President and all club members here present and visitors and guests, brings me to the end of my presentation. I'd like to bring it to a close and say thank you very, very much for being an amazing audience. I'd like to hand back over to the President, hopefully to also allow for our Rotarian James Onyoin, DAG James Onyoin, to lead us through some kind of interactive session now. Over to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, our friend Joseph, for taking us through that wonderful presentation. At this moment, I would like to call upon none other than DAG James to guide us through the interaction session. Over to you, DAG James.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, amazing President. And as usual, when you see Joseph Ajal on the flyer, you know that it's going to be a great presentation. Thank you so much, Coach Joseph Ajal. I'm very, very proud of you. Of course, you are our president for the International Coaching Federation Uganda chapter. You are always welcome to Kampala Daybreak. And you're also welcome to stay for good and join Rotary. I think we've discussed that, but it's a matter of time and you should really get into Kampala Daybreak. Okay, so we're going to the next and very exciting part of the discussion today. I'm going to ask for questions. Let me see. I encourage members to put up your hands if you have a question. Let me start from the chat box. I see if there is any question there. Let me read something from Chris Masete. He says, "Thank you, Joseph, for wonderful talk. Supposing you put a rookie through a blast furnace and you do see change, and yet you have high expectations in them, how would you handle?" I think he says you don't see change. I beg to be corrected on that, but I think Jal, I think what he's saying, if you put a rookie through the furnace and you don't see the change that you expect, what do you do? How do you handle that? That's the question which has come through. Maybe let me read another one from amazing President Sandra. Thank you for a good presentation. I'm inspired. How do you fight apathy in the club? I think that's maybe a big problem in clubs. People just want to be there. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to read. They don't want to develop themselves. It becomes a problem. I think that's the question from amazing President Sandra Oriema from Port Bell. Thank you for that question. I think we can start with those, and then we shall go to Chris Cafero, who has raised up his hand. You first handle those, then we go to the physical question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DAG James Onyoin, fellow coach. The first question from Chris Masete: if you've invested time into this rookie and you don't see any seeming change in terms of development, in terms of competency building and skills and capacity, should you give up on them? Is it frustrating? Of course it's frustrating. But ask yourself the question, how much time have you invested? The fact that you say it's a rookie means it's 1 year. This person has not even done their first year of service. A person graduates from being a rookie to somebody else to being, whatever title it is that they are then called from the second year onwards. It means that they haven't even done a year of service. So give it time. And you might recall that in my presentation earlier on, I talked about the 10,000 hour rule of expertise. Anything that you do, you practice over and over again, you become better at it, you become good at it. So it takes 10,000 hours of practice to become an expert. 10,000 hours is 10 years. So why would we be impatient with a rookie within their first year of service? Okay. Now, if we graduate them to what we call a hyper pool. So they come from the rookie pool to the hyper pool, which is the high potential pool. But somebody, my trainer, when I became a certified talent practitioner, my trainer, Chris Tenga, who is also a fellow CTP, we call ourselves CTPs, he said to me, potential is just like pregnancy. Until the baby is born, it's potential. Yeah, you know there's a baby in the womb there. But until that baby is born in the maternity theater, in the maternity ward, and you hear the cry of the baby, it's potential, because unfortunately, sometimes the potential may not necessarily materialize into a living born child. So that potential has to be nurtured and carried through the 9 months, quote unquote, of rookieship or fellowship or whatever, until eventually this young potential, high potential talent is birthed into a living baby. So you must continue supporting, mentoring, coaching, supervising, giving them crucible experiments such that they don't give up and that they can eventually succeed. The second question is, how do we fight apathy? Apathy is common in so many voluntary organizations. The reason why some people in organizations that pay a salary with full benefits and everything, a full range of benefits, stay is the salary, period. But if you did an engagement survey, you'll realize that there are so many people who are extremely disengaged, not interested in doing anything whatsoever. They turn up to work, they don't perform well, they hate their job, they hate their manager, they hate their boss, and so on and so forth. They hate the brand. They don't even believe in the product anymore. And that happens, disengagement. That's why people sometimes resign. Sometimes they are terminated. That is in a typical commercial enterprise where there's an actual job, where there's a salary to be earned. In the case of Rotary clubs and other voluntary organizations as these, the enforceability is so low. There's no performance enforceability. Do we have a key performance indicator metric here for performance to join the club? No, it's not there, apart from attending club fellowships, basically. And so you can do absolutely nothing. They have not broken the law. You can't arrest anybody. Apathy is something you can do absolutely nothing about. But how to drive engagement is through activities, meaningful activities. Inviting, interesting speakers, people who shed light on different subjects and topics, involving yourselves in community projects, partnering with 2 or 3 or 4 other clubs and coming together to do a small project in your communities, participating in the cancer run. It's activity after activity after activity, and regularity and frequency of meetings that allows people to build that affinity and engagement. And if you can, don't insist on just virtual meetings. Virtual has played its part. We needed that because of the lockdowns, COVID-19 and so on. But whenever you can, have a blended approach to activities of your clubs. When people come together, they build camaraderie, they build rapport, they build brotherhood, they build sisterhood, they build friendship. and they're able to work closely together. And so finally, you want to be able to have inspiring leadership. Leadership that speaks the fact that we intend to do X, Y, Z, and we keep our promises to you. If people are not inspired by leadership, they'll become apathetic. They'll quit in droves. So you must, as leaders, even though it's pro bono work, you must consistently challenge yourself to rise up to the occasion, have interesting projects like the DIA project, amongst many others, the Rotary Cancer Run that you've done for a long time now, and let it be consistent. Say what you mean and mean what you say, and let it be seen through your own example that you are an effective and efficient leader. That way, you reduce the risk of apathy. You can't eliminate it completely, but you reduce it and allow more and more engagement in your clubs.
Okay, thank you very much, Joseph. Yes, thank you very much for that.
3 more minutes to wrap up this session. Thank you.
Okay, so Coach Ajal, I think we shall be closing shortly. I just have one hand, but let me read something which is in the chat room. Thanks, namesake. That is from Joseph Kabito. Is recruitment of already trained applicable? Is recruitment of already trained staff applicable approach you would advise as a faster way to increase your capacity, or otherwise kindly advise? He wants to know whether recruitment would be, a better way of getting ready-made products into your team. And then let's have just 2 questions. There's a hand by Dan Atuhaire, followed by Mike Kennedy, our district governor, and then Ruth Asimwe. In that order, can we please, can you unmute, ask your question so that Joseph can wrap it up quickly and we close this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dan is my name, and my question is about role fatigue. How do you deal with an employee who has attained the highest possible level of position in the organization, and they have possibly reached the pinnacle of the benefits in terms of maybe salary, remunerations, and the like? Do you eventually push them out, or how do you keep them motivated beyond that level? Thank you.
Okay, let's take the next question from our amazing governor, Mike Sevalu.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jonyain, for the moderation. A great presentation by our guest speaker. Great, really motivating, inspiring, and encouraging and empowering. 2 quick ones. One is related to the previous one. Of late, you see very many corporate leaders switching jobs extremely regularly. They are those that I usually meet and ask them, where are you now? Because every other time you meet them, they've switched jobs. And the answer is that the job was not challenging anymore. So how do you sustain challenge at the place of work to remain there if their perspective has anything to go by? Then secondly, how do you apply those principles that you've well elaborated about in terms of a space for volunteers? Because when we are in the space for corporates, promotions, better rewards, better remuneration, better terms could inspire someone to be the best version of themselves. But how do you apply that with the same level of efficiency and effectiveness in the space for volunteers? Otherwise, your presentation is life-changing, and it is an amazing one. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
District Governor.
And the last question from Ruth Asimwe, Kanyaruji.
Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. My boss at the club. You're welcome. Yeah.
Thank you, moderator. And thank you, potential Rotarian Joseph. We are waiting for you at Kampala Daybreak. My question is, what is your take for clubs which like nominate a Rotarian who has just spent 2 years in a club to be a president, maybe president nominee, then the next year president-elect, and nothing much is done? What would be your take? Do you think such a Rotarian would be able to deliver, or what would you advise us? Then number two, what is your take on somebody, especially these corporate and also executives we see who stay in the same position for 20, 30 years? Do you think such people would be good performers? What is your take?
Okay, thank you. Amazing President, just allow me one person. Chris, he was the first person to put up his hand. Can you ask and then we give it to the presenter? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, President. I've liked the presentation. However, I see the presentation being so much directed to the president in the club. And my question goes to all that presented, basically investment in members. How can it be reduced to better performance of a body chief? He has been so much directed to the president, but I'm looking at the body chief also being helped to perform better so that body groups can push the club forward. Thank you, President.
Okay, thank you. Over to you, Coach Ajal. And then after that, I return to the president. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DAG James. I'd like to perhaps just narrow down all the questions and comments into just 2 segments. Basically, the first one is talent pipeline development. Member apathy arises because there is perhaps a not so robust talent pipeline development. In answer to your question, Rotarian Chris Cafero, it's the exact same principle. The principle is the same. Leadership development, regardless of who holds the title, is inconsequential. It really doesn't matter whether somebody is president or is a body chief or whatever the case might be, or is a treasurer or a sergeant at arms. The principles are the same. Effectively, when you build capacity at the top, you build it for the long haul. It's a long game. You don't do it overnight. It's not a short-term overnight success story. No, overnight success takes a long time. That's how I'd like to conclude on that particular aspect. And when it comes to the aspect of long stay, people who have stayed in the organization for long and they don't seem to be interested in leaving, well, that's a personal choice of theirs. But are there institutional frameworks that allow for the organization to infuse fresh water in itself? If you think about a crater lake, why doesn't a crater lake have life? Because it's a crater lake. There's no outlet. There are no tributaries. It's not flowing out. It's not a river. Why does a river have fish? Why is it teeming with life? Because it's fresh water, or a freshwater lake for that matter, because the water is constantly bubbling forth. So in organizations as well, whether it's Rotary or any other voluntary organization or even commercial organization, people get exhausted. People really do get exhausted. And it's okay for people to leave. You shouldn't force people to stay. It's okay for them to leave. And when they do you have a robust talent management and succession planning template that can be copied and pasted everywhere you go consistently, every year for decades? It's the consistency. It's the courage to pursue and to do those things consistently. I do realize my time is fast spent. It's already 8 on the dot. I'd like to hand back over to Dr. James Nyoing.
Thank you very much, Coach Ajal. Over to you, amazing President Edward.
Thank you very much for doing amazingly well in that introduction session. And thank you, Joseph, for those very excellent responses you offered. Friends, our time is fast spent. Requesting for 5-10 minutes for us to wrap up this meeting. Just also to remind you that if our guest speaker allows, we shall probably have some extra minutes into the Chimeza session. Yes, it's been an amazing talk and presentation, and I would request Rotarian Justice Mugabo to extend a vote of thanks on our behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, amazing President. Our dear Governor Mike Sevala and members present, allow me on behalf of all of us to appreciate our guest speaker, Joseph Halal, for taking us through the succession pipeline and the talent development. I believe this has been very timely, very inspiring as we start our Rotary year. And I believe very strongly that our amazing leadership will lead Daybreak to a high impact learning organization. And Mr. Joseph Jal, we look forward to you becoming a rookie in Daybreak in the near future. Once again, thank you very much for that inspiring talk. We appreciate as Daybreak.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rotarian Vincent Mugabo, for that befitting vote of thanks. In the interest of time, we will share the statistics on our various channels. I will proceed to request Rotarian Anthony Ogwang to give us the final toast. Thank you. Rotarian Anthony Ogwang.
I can stand in for him. For that wonderful presentation, very knowledgeable, very tickling and all that. Thank you. I want to really propose a toast to Rotary International.
Rotary the world over.
Rotary world over. Rotary world over.
Rotary world over.
Rotary worldwide.
Thank you. Indeed, Rotary world over. Friends on call, we have now officially entered the Chimeza session. Our guest speaker, Joseph Ajal, how many minutes do you have? We could have some members on call that might still need some clarification on one or two issues. How many minutes do you have?
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, we have been graciously granted an additional 10 minutes for our own use. It is up to us to use it, but there it is. PAG James, I hand over to you to take us through the Chimeza session as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Chimeza, normally we just put up your hand and I will allow you to open your microphone. I will not be reading the chat very much. Feel free, this is Chimeza now. You can have a glass in your hand and even a wine, there's no problem.
Champagne
so
break.
Just, yes, so you can have, yeah, you can have English breakfast or anything. Feel free to put up your hands, please, when you have a question.
James.
Yes, there's one from our AG, Judy.
Thank you very much, AP Edward, PAG, and the presenter. I just want to thank the presenter for such an interesting presentation, practical, that challenges us and shows us how to move forward. Succession planning has always been a key thing for me. So I'm glad that today I've heard from the experts. Have a good day.
Thank you, Rotarian Judy. I remember you from a meeting that I attended not too long ago. But thanks for that compliment.
Thank you. Next, let's have a comment or question from Moses Sebagala and followed by Ruth Kanyaruj again.
Thank you very much. This is AP Moses from Kasangati. I appreciate the talk. I have two questions. Number one, kindly share your number if you don't mind, or your contacts. That will help us a lot. Then number two, I asked a question in the chat room that if you're in a busy organization or Rotary Club, which is really growing big, and most of the members are volunteers, as you're aware, they are volunteers, but they have not much time to do some work, but they want to serve Rotary, but they don't have time. They're engaged in so many things. kindly help us to give us practical ways how to engage members, some simple practical ways how to engage very busy people in a given organization. I submit.
Rotarian Moses, thank you very much for that question. Engaging busy people, especially in pro bono organizations, is a constant challenge. It's constant. You'll absolutely never resolve it completely. But the things you can do is have interesting, meetings, have interesting ideas, have meetups, get-togethers beyond just work, beyond just fellowships. Of course, fellowships as a standard are a constant. But in addition to fellowships, then have those interesting excursions, trips. You could even do an excursion to a national park. You could do, support different activities. It's the activities that drive member engagement, period. There's no magic bullet. There's no silver wand. It's not there. There's no silver bullet or magic wand. It's consistency, and consistency in activities, in events, in engagement, member engagement, in communication. People need to see you. The PR arm must be vibrant and active in the club and outside the club. It should be consistent and should just not be seen, but it should be felt too. Otherwise, you'll keep struggling with members who are busy and even if a busy person can give you just 4 to 4 hours of their time in a whole month, that's okay. That's okay. Accept it. That's what they can give you as of that point in time. If their circumstances do change in future, well and good, because we also don't know what every individual is dealing with in their personal spaces. So that's perfectly in order. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joseph. I asked a question. Part of my question was not answered. I wanted to know how far can we go in the name of engaging new Rotarians? For instance, we see that in normal circumstances, for somebody to become a manager goes through some seniority in capacity building, in development generally. But here we come and this is voluntary. Somebody is elected to be a president, basically after 2 years of joining Rotary. What would you advise us? Do you think that person would really be able to perform? Because this is voluntary, somebody is willing to serve and is readily available, and then the club goes ahead and gives him the responsibility of presidency. What is your take?
Rotarian Ruth Kanyaruju, there is no hard and fast rule about readiness for succession. So because people join Rotary, this is not a company. This is an organization. It's a member-driven voluntary organization worldwide. So people join at different levels of competency. Now, there was a question asked by one of the Rotarians earlier in the plenary that when do you know that this person is ready for succession? It's a similar question. And their question there actually was related to, can you hire for succession? Yes, you can. You've had adverts that are put in newspapers and it's written re-advertised because the first time they failed to get internal capacity. Then they went out, they got low quality CVs. Then they eventually go out, use an executive hiring firm, and they get very high quality CVs. In much the same way, you can recruit for succession. And there's absolutely no rule that says a Rotarian has to have served for 10 years to become a president. No, that would be missing the mark by a mile. The point is, do they have the competencies and skills required? Like I said, this is not a company. You might be a rookie in terms of your first year of service, but you come with a wealth of experience. You're knowledgeable, you're skillful, you're competent. You have all these other things. You have, for example, allow me to use this example, okay? Let's say Rotarian James Onyoin joins you this year. He's a rookie. Are you going to negate all the 20 plus years of experience that he has as a certified public accountant, as a member of boards, as a member of the lead of East African directors, as a member of the board of directors of Equity Bank, and so on and so forth, as a lecturer at Strathmore University Business School? No, you're not going to negate all of these skills and competencies that he already comes with as a package. And so it doesn't hurt to directly hire for recruitment, rather for succession. So you bring this person on board, let them go through the rookie year as they learn the ropes, and in the second year, boom, they're ready for succession. Nothing wrong with that. The problem, however, arises if they just have enthusiasm, but they don't have skills and competencies. That's where the rubber hits the road. That's where it gets very interesting. The friction gets a little bit heated. because they don't have the skills. Yes, they're enthusiastic, yes, but they don't have the leadership potential. They don't have leadership capacity. Maybe they have gaps in their integrity. You don't want to have a leader like that. So that way, now the rule works against you, okay? But there's no hard and fast rule that says you cannot hire for succession straight up into the executive. You've had CEOs being hired from outside the organization, but there was a talent pipeline. There were general managers being prepared for succession for 5 years. But at the time when they were interviewed by the board, or the decision to actually appoint a CEO was made, they were not ready. So they are forced to go out and hire even from across the border sometimes. So that is perfectly in order. In talent management, there's no hard and fast rule. What matters is the person ready for succession when you want them to take over the role, period. Thank you. Over to you, dear James.
Thank you very much. We have another hand from my Changemaker president, Mr. Belep, Frederick Chitakule.
Thank you, AG James, and good to see you again, Joseph. Daybreakers recruiting Joseph would have recruited a president. You would agree with me. Now, this is my question, Joseph. One of the challenges that Rotary faces, and I believe many other organizations, is retention, membership retention. Quite an array of reasons to that, because sometimes we recruit target Rotarians. I've come, I want to go to Houston, get a visa, and once I've gotten it, it becomes I take the back seat. It becomes difficult to even exit. So what are the quick nuggets that you'd really pack for us to enhance membership retention? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rotarian Frederick Chitakule. It's called EVP. In organizations, it's employee value proposition. But in clubs, it's MVP, member value proposition, period. If you have a weak MVP, you'll keep suffering to attract and retain talent. If you have a strong and robust MVP, member value proposition, you'll struggle to keep people away because you have an influx of members wanting to join your club. People associate with success. Success has many fathers and mothers, and failure is an orphan. People want to associate with success. So if your club is robust, your activities are visible and vibrant, there's a return on investment in terms of their time, in terms of networking, they have that good feel of doing something good for the community, surely, why would you struggle? Yes, you will struggle, no doubt about it, but you'll have better success. Your success rate will be above 60%. For a voluntary organization, above 60, let's say 60 to 70% is perfectly in order. Perfectly in order for a voluntary organization. 60 to 70% engagement and return on investment in terms of time, and commitment. But it's that MVP, member value proposition. Things like branding, member branding. Do you have giveaways? I know you've talked about the Rotary fellowships and conventions that happen cross-border, perhaps in North America or in the US, in the UK, or across the border in Kenya and other parts of Africa. Yes, that's part of the member value proposition, but it shouldn't be the only thing attracting them. Otherwise, like you've rightfully pointed out, they'll quit after the convention, they've got what they needed, out. So you need to consistently ensure that there is a robust, that you measure return on investment, that you measure success. What does success look like for every member? Yes, it's impossible to please everybody consistently. Yeah, that's impossible. We accept and acknowledge that fact. But if you make it a habit as a club, as leaders, to consistently paint a picture of success for every member, from the interactor to the Rotaractor to the Rotarian to the rookie to the senior members, club officers, and so on, district governor officers, and so on, you will definitely make it more interesting for people to join and stay. That's my contribution to that. Over to you, AG James.
Thank you very much. I think you've given us the bullet, the silver bullet. We'll use that membership value proposition. The moment you are able to know what makes it for anyone, every member of your club, identify what they love, make sure it is there. If they like dancing, have some outings with some dance involved. Thank you. By the way, I'm told the dancing Rotarians are back. Members of the club, those of you who would like to go to governor, it is possible. Just get in touch with the Honorable Florence and she'll take you to governor. Thank you. Members, is there any other question? I don't see a hand up.
Also, my time is fast spent.
Thank you.
Oh, your
Thank
time
you.
is also fast spent. Okay, thank you so much.
Yes.
I would like to thank you so much, Coach Ajal. This has been very, very, very inspiring. And we look forward to, I mean, we'll call you back to measure the progress that we're making so that we know that the return on investment was worth it. Thank you very much. And over to you, amazing President Edward. Thank you.
Maybe he should share his presentations with the president or me or you, so that we can give it to
That's
those who are
okay.
interested.
Okay, that's fine. And